I'm Eric Newton, and this is the Together Recap. As you may have heard, we're trying something new this month, recap episodes with our good friend, Dr. Michelle Wang. We wanted to go back and review some of our earlier shows, and this seemed like a really fun way to do it. Dr. Wang is fantastic. She works with couples here in San Francisco in some very fun and some very interesting ways. And you should check out her website. You can learn more about her there, and that is drmichellewang.com. And that'll be in our show notes, so don't worry about writing it down now. Let us know what you think of these recaps. We love hearing from you, and you can always email me at host@together.guide. So with that, let's get right to it. Welcome to our first recap bonus episode, folks. Thanks for listening. So just to give you some background here, I've had this plan. We're at episode number 40 now. And I've had this idea that it's time to take a look back. It's time to look and see what we've gone through and if there's been anything to learn. And so I've been looking for the perfect guest. And I have to say, I think I found her. So in studio with me today is my producer, Charlene Goto.
Hello there.
Happy to have her back. Some of you may remember her from the earlier episodes. And I'm really excited to announce the guest I was alluding to, Michelle Wang, who's a couples therapist and a PhD in psychology. Thanks for being here, Michelle.
Thank you so much, both of you guys, for having me.
I'm just very honored to have you here.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Now, you've listened to a couple, well, you've listened to more than a couple, but there are two specific episodes you wanted to talk about today, right?
Yeah.
And what were those?
It was Katie and Doug.
Yeah.
The episode with Katie and Doug. That was phenomenal.
It's my favorite.
Probably my favorite, too, out of the ones I've listened to. Yeah. And David and Kate.
It's I shouldn't rank them, but those are two of my absolute most adored episodes.
Yeah.
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 Okay, great. Now, this will be exciting because you've listened to them in the last couple days, and you've got notes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm a horribly unorganized human, and I have very few notes and haven't listened to either of those episodes in a couple of months. So it'll be a lot of fun to see our different perspectives on it.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, let's start with the first one chronologically with David and Kate.
David and Kate. So this was the episode where they talked extensively about non-monogamy and kind of how also the age difference, which seemed to be of significance throughout the episode as well. But I think the most pivotal moment in that episode where I kind of just put down my breakfast was when Kate was talking about anger and the release of anger being just this hugely cathartic experience and that she wasn't afraid of.
Yeah.
And I think that this is something that comes up a lot it manifests in different ways with different couples. But I'm hearing so much in every episode about the ability to tolerate our partner's deeply flawed humanity and not run away from it. And for Kate, it was tolerating and accepting and even relishing in David's anger. And she even called it sexy at one point. Yeah. That was fascinating to me. So
that blew my mind too. I recall, I don't know if this actually happened, Char, maybe you remember, when she first articulated the depth of her insight and her wisdom around anger. I remember being so moved in the midst of the interview that I actually couldn't speak. I just stopped and had to soak it in for a minute.
Well, she had, because she was so kind of descriptive, I don't remember if we put exactly how much she talked about, like obviously the throwing the furniture and like that kind of thing. But the way that she, when she was here and like when we were here and we were hearing it for the first time, her description and the way that she put it out there of how much anger and how explosive he really did get. I don't know if that came off as well as much as we felt it in the room at the time.
Yeah. It was balanced because he is expressive of his anger and in his words, tips furniture.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I was going to correct you there.
And I think I was the one who said throws furniture.
Yeah, maybe that's what I hear.
So he was so expressive. You could even say explosive, but there was zero absolutely no fear or resistance on Kate's part. And normally you would expect some level of resistance to anger because it's a scary emotion.
Right.
But even he didn't get angry on the show, of course, but when you could tell by her ability to talk about the times that he has been angry, she just opens herself completely to it and accepts it. And and that's the distinction between perceived abuse and wisdom around anger, capacity around anger that I note. What do you think about that?
Yeah, that's. I actually heard Kate say in the episode that she actually did feel terror, but that the terror was in tandem with a deep trust that her partner didn't have any intention to hurt her. And I think that's the difference, right, of abuse versus non-abuse, is that kind of the ability to experience your partner's rage and, in Kate's words, his roar, as something that's something that needs to come out, and there's no intention of damage. He doesn't have this intention to kind of destruct her or the relationship. And I think that terror and that, the fear that comes with witnessing your partner and experiencing your partner's anger is quite natural. But I think that when it comes in tandem, and when it's in tandem with a trust, then that sort of creates this a higher likelihood, I think, to be able to hold your partner's anger. And she and Doug and Katie talk a lot about kind of creating a larger container when your partner is twitching.
A larger context? Is that another way to say that?
Sure. Larger context, larger emotional sort of bowl, so that your partner can just sandbox, so to speak, so your partner can throw tantrums and do whatever they wish within that container. So yeah, I think that's powerful. And yeah.
Well, the concept of creating that larger sandbox is fascinating to me. I think it's really important, but the mechanics of how to do that are what I think eludes most of us. And when I'm in the midst of a fight, certainly sometimes eludes me.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking back on the moment that Kate cites as what shifted her way of being around this. Yeah. So moving, right?
So moving.
Do you recall this, Shar? She watched the World Trade Center come down from 5 blocks away.
Yes, I do recall that now.
And she said she stood there for 2 hours and just really had no choice but to watch.
Right.
And through the process allowed all of the manifest fury and anger that was being expressed by an entire culture, really, or some portion of a culture against our culture, become part of her way of being. And that shifted her ability to be with the anger of the normal people in her life.
Right. Yeah.
But the rest of us, I mean, I think we can all harken back to that moment, but it affected us or it didn't that way, right? And so the rest of us don't always have these epochal, these seminal moments that shift our entire way of being. So how do the rest of us create a bigger sandbox in the midst of a fight when we know we should, but we're still getting triggered because a fight is not fun and we're scared and we're angry and we're defensive?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think about that all the time. I think that one thing to note is that anger, I feel in my personal experience and my work with clients, anger is never really kind of a solitary emotion, right? It's always kind of intertwined with so much other more nuanced stuff that we just don't want to talk about. So we just sort of say, I'm pissed, because, I mean, maybe underneath that is just sort of some delicate balance of being angry and rejected and a complete sense of meaninglessness or something, right? And that creates anger, or whatever combination for people in different circumstances. So I think that to expand the container of anger, we can also view it as expanding all aversive emotions, right? Or emotions that we're averse to, learning to expand that. And we may not have sort of these events that occur that Kate, sort of experienced. We might not all experience those events in that same way and have the anger move through us the way it moved through her. But I think that we have opportunities every day simply because life is very, very difficult. And so we have a lot of opportunities to expand on whether it's anger or feelings of rejection or loneliness or boredom or hunger even.
So when you say expanded, are you saying the capacity to feel it?
Yeah, the capacity to feel it somatically in your body as opposed to intellectualizing it, because we are so misled by our intellect sometimes. I would say often.
So
And we and our minds can lie to us, but our bodies can't. And so I think there's a way that we can really somatically and very much in our body feel whatever it is we're trying to avoid feeling. And I think so many couples have already talked about this.
I love it. Okay, so back to Katie and Doug. Now, what was it about? Let me just say, Katie and Doug. I just love this episode so much.
Me too.
The moment they walked in the room, I fell in love. Just fell for them.
Yeah.
And I still adore them. I was at their Doug's birthday party yesterday, in fact.
Okay.
Just soaking those two up. Their bee boxes and their chickens and their composting and just the
They
whole...
did talk about the composting, yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, the whole thing.
That's great.
You know, the thing about those two, and I knew this and you didn't, Shar, from before, because Jenny Sauerklein and Haley Winter, who were my close friends, told me a little bit about them because they're Haley's parents. Told me a little bit about them before they came on the show. They said they've been through a lot and they're open books. So I knew that they were going to be open from the moment that they came in, and they did not disappoint. What fascinates me about those two is their absolute dogged insistence on transparency and presence. Transparency is access to presence. That's what I think. That's what makes me feel so comfortable around them. Is you know, that's my ethos as well, and they just really they embody it with a maturity that I can see as possible, but you know,
Yeah.
they've got 30, 40 years on me with it. No, they're not that much older. 20 years on me.
Yeah.
Anyway, what did you take from the show?
So much. I felt from the episode that Doug really plays the role of an anchor, right? He's at home. He did a lot of the child rearing and kind of he mentioned kind of, I like that she was away sometimes just so I didn't have anyone interfering with my parenting choices. And that was, so I always got the sense not always, but I felt this when I was listening to it, that he was sort of the anchor that allowed Katie to kind of roam and wander and be the spirit that she is. So in some ways that doesn't surprise me, and it feels like it serves a real function for them too.
You know what's fascinating about that, just to pause you there?
Yeah.
I get that too. And he would say that, I think, or they would say that that's the case. And yet, he's the one who had more extramarital, I don't even know what word to use it, frankly, because they don't consider it infidelity.
They called it non-monogamy, yeah.
Yeah, and extramarital non-monogamy. That's redundant. Anyway, he was the one who was primarily non-monogamous. She had one experience, but he had several.
Right.
Which hurt her every time, but she also didn't try to stop them.
Yeah.
Too much, I think.
Yeah.
So he was the anchor, yet he was also doing what he was doing. How do you reckon? What do you see there?
Well, my first thought is that even the firmest and deepest of all anchors still require an element of, I don't know what you want to call it. I don't know. I don't want to label that for Doug, but I think that if I imagine myself in that position, I would want an element of chaos.
Chaos. I did not think you were going to use that word.
Yeah. I mean, there's something it's high entropy, right? I think might be my understanding of Doug, my brief understanding of Doug, he might use that word, high entropy. Yeah. But I think that disturbing the piece a little bit and having a little bit of chaos, no matter how anchored of a person you are, I think we all kind of need that to sustain the tension between familiarity and predictability and mystery and chaos and unpredictability is kind of what sustains a lot of relationships, in my opinion. So I think that that's how I viewed Doug's infidelity or non-monogamy.
You know, the other thing about Doug is he's so focused on the notion of story and personal identity and ego these
Yes.
concepts, and how really that which we think is true and real as our identities are stories, fundamentally, which is to say made up,
Yeah.
with limited substance, and not that reliable or objectively true. And that, I think his point is that when one realizes that, we can let go of some of the drama around those stories and have some freedom and some latitude, and also peace and joy, the peace and joy that comes with knowing that we don't really know very much and we're not that important. Do you think that ties in with the notion of entropy in that way?
Kind of erasing the ego, tying in with entropy. That's interesting. I didn't think of it like that. I noticed that there was so much of a persistence on Doug's part, to a fierceness almost, to kind of be outside of the box, to have no box at all, as he said, and to kind of be outside of that paradigm completely, which he kind of quotes a lot of. He talked about kind of having that kind of fundamental belief that we don't have to just adopt and accept the paradigms that are passed down to us, but to create new stories for ourselves. I see that as really tied to his sense of erasing ego as much as possible. But I'm not sure how that ties in with the high entropy. I don't know if he would view the bursts of chaos in his life and in their marriage as sort of times where his ego was acting out and seeking more attention. Because he did mention, as much as he talks about eliminating ego, he's just like everyone else, right?
Yeah.
He has the I deserve moments, I have the right moments. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that the point is to acknowledge that they're there. It's to be aware of them. I don't think it's possible. I don't believe, and I think he would probably echo that it's not possible to eliminate those anyway.
Right.
It's about acknowledging that they're so and not taking them so damn seriously as self.
Yeah.
And, now we're getting hyper theoretical, but there's something around the notion of entropy, which I had never considered in this context before, but I love. I wonder if we could look at it as the mind seeks to create a kind of order through story. The mind is always seeking to define and categorize and box and judge and name experience in order to create safety, in order to create something that's cognizable and manipulable and safe.
Yeah.
But that ultimately none of that is possible. And fundamentally none of that's possible. And it only really exists within the construct that mind has created, which is this idea that there is a right and a wrong, something that we need to avoid, happiness, non-happiness, danger.
Right.
The whole construct only exists because of mind, and then mind seeks to control it, and it's all futile. And that entropy is in a way the natural process of allowing things to deconstruct and be as they are without definition, without order. But it's not an absence of order. It's just things as they are unstructured. And so entropy is a way to invite that awareness of what's so absent mind. Okay, so what else did you pull from Katie and Doug?
Well, I think that what I pulled from Katie and Doug and David and Kate was some common themes of what really, you asked that question to Kate and David. You asked kind of what are you doing right and what are you doing wrong, and I think that there's for both these, for four of these people, there seems to be a theme of trying to cultivate a relationship in which kind of both partners are fully accepting of each other's humanity. And by that, I know that's pretty broad, but when we unpack that, that includes allowing our partners to say whatever it is they need to say and experience whatever it is they need to experience, and being a container for them in those moments. If that is not possible, then the angry person or the emotionally fraught person can kind of remove themselves from that partnership for however temporary or not. I know Katie and Doug were separated twice and they weren't living together at 40 years of their marriage, and remove themselves from that equation and sort of transform whatever emotions they're experiencing through, like with Kate, it was through art. Right. And for Katie, it's through dance, and for Doug might be through martial arts, but kind of not using your partner in those moments where you feel like resources are really low. And I think that that's one thing that comes up a lot in my own couples therapy session, or not my own, but when I conduct them with patients, is that there's this sort of grasping need to have their partner fix what they've done to you, right? And sometimes I see there's a correlation between how limited one's capacity is to fix themselves and how quickly resentment builds. Like a very positive correlation there.
Meaning if they feel that they can't fix themselves, they become resentful about their partner's inability to do so as well.
Yeah, and their partner in return feels begins to create resentment in them that they are being asked to do what is
impossible task.
Yeah, an impossible task, and a task that doesn't really belong to our partners to some extent, right? This idea that our partners are unconditionally fixing stuff for us and being there for us. I don't know that that's necessarily a realistic expectation. I think that creates a lot of disappointment. Certainly when they can and when they want to, sure. But I think to some extent we have to own it. And I think owning that is not a bad thing. It's empowering. There's something very disempowering about giving all the power and the ability to heal ourselves to another person.
Absolutely.
So.
But it's happening on an unconscious level,
sure.
right? When that's going on, and when the grasping partner is grasping, it's perfectly justified to their conscious mind, right? And it's the other person's duty, and the other person's shirking. It comes out in different ways.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how is that person supposed to interrupt it?
Well, that's the protector talking, right? That's the protector part of us, the firefighter that wants to just. Firefighters have a tendency towards a quick rescue, right? So that's kind of fix it now, fix it quick, do it for me. If you love me, you would do this sort of mentality, and I think that's the protector part of us, which is not innately a bad thing, But I think it is important, like we talked about earlier, to talk to it. And to see kind of behind it, like so many of the couples on your show have talked about, what's behind the jealousy, what's behind the insecurity, what's behind the protector, who have we put in behind bars, like who are the exiles within us, right? And I think that once we tap into that, we're much more generous with ourselves, and then we can be much more generous with our partners. But yeah, it's a hard process.
It's a hard process. I'm curious about the process. That seems like the insight that you're talking about that's available comes from awareness. And awareness just comes from putting our attention on a thing, on an experience, right? Mm-hmm. So somebody comes into your office, and if they're very engaged in that process and very committed to their position and their perspective, what's the mechanism that you use to start bringing awareness in those moments? I mean, I'm sure there are 1,000 tools at your disposal, but is there a kind of a general theme to how they work?
There is. I think that this is why, actually I'll back up. There is, in short. The one question that I think myself and all the other therapists I know use is basically, is this working for you? And I think it's a very simple question, but whenever I ask it, this isn't about right or wrong. This is really about what's working for you and what's not. And this is why it's easier for me to work with couples who are maybe 30 and above, 30 and older, because I find that they feel that they feel the pressing and urgent nature of time. And that gets them really thinking about how precious time is and the seconds that tick. So when I ask them, has this been working for you? It is a much more poignant question for them than it is for a patient of mine who might be in their early 20s, who feel that time is infinite. So I think it's very simple, really. Has this been working for you? Whether or not, however you want to, we all attach ourselves to all kinds of stuff.
Because how is this working for you? Yeah, invites a non-judgmental approach to the experience, to the actual dialogue or the actual, what's actually happening in the relationship.
Yeah.
Right? They can look at it and say, well, yeah, no, actually that's not working for me. So then, which is probably the answer. Right. No, that's not working for me. But then what? So
one exercise I do a lot is comes from So one exercise I do a lot is basically this a guided visual meditation that sort of I do the guiding and they close their eyes and I guide them through sort of a scenario that taps into unmet childhood needs, unmet needs that stem from childhood, was created and manifested in childhood. And I think that when we start accessing that's essentially accessing their exiles. And we are able to arrive at like I said, a more compassionate place of what exactly are these beliefs for? What function do they serve? And believe it or not, so many people, complain and yell in my sessions and, scream at their partners for not giving them what they need. And then when their partner finally arrives at a place where he or she can hear the needs and they ask, okay, so what is it that you need? The other partner immediately falls into silence. There's so many people who don't actually know fundamentally what they need, but they just know that they know when they're not getting it. But I think that it's one thing to know this is what I don't need, but it's another completely different story to know what it is you need. And I think that taps into needs that were never met in childhood, needs that may not be rational, but it's okay because our irrational child minds had created a narrative around that. And that's what we have to honor. So,
what do you need? It's a stumping question and probably the best one to ask.
Yeah.
Ourselves in those moments as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, on that note, thanks so much for being here today. I'm in awe of the way that you think about these issues. It's just a pleasure to talk to you. So thanks for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. Well, that's it for our recap episode, folks. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to learn more about Dr. Wang, you can find her website at drmichellewang.com. That's drmichellewang.com. And I'll put that in our show notes. And we'd love to know what you think of our recap ideas, so don't be shy about reaching out. You can always email me at host@together.guide. And as you know, I love hearing from listeners, so definitely do it. And if you liked what you heard on our show today, as always, please consider donating to our Patreon campaign. We're on a mission to crush shame, as you may know, and we've got more expenses than we do income, so every penny really helps. You can find our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/together. That's patreon.com/together. That's all for today, folks. Talk to you on Monday.